Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Truth Will Set You Free show, sponsored by TLBTV and the Liberty Project, Beacon Project. We have a very special guest with us today, and I am so thankful to have this time with you, Carol. We have Carol Graham. She is an amazing person. She is so many things. First of all, I'd like to say she's a wonderful wife, grandmother, mother, and she's also a fantastic dog lover. That's just on the natural side of her personal. But she's also an amazing author. She has wrote a memoir that will just touch your heart, your mind. And to me, she should have been known as a hope specialist with her great book called Battered Hope. She really offers great hope. She shares her journey. She has had great losses financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and just the life journey itself. She had financial ruins. But the thing I love about her, you can't put a label of victim on Carol. You can forget about that. She has been in many anthologies. She has an amazing, I was listening to her shows today. She has an amazing talk show. And that talk show is something that you have to really tune in. And it's called Never Ever Give Up Hope. And to show how much she shares and gives, not only does she have a bi-weekly talk show, she has a blog that is always current, always inspirational, and it too is called Never Ever Give Up Hope. She is also a person who has saved dogs. I mean, over 30 dogs have been saved through her hands. And that is just a blessing for dog lovers. I'm sure you're glad to hear that. She resides in Washington State. And she is a person that if you ever get a chance to talk to her, you want her as a friend. And I appreciate her being on our show today. Carol, how are you?
Well, you're going to make me cry.
You are just such a blessing. I mean, you give so much of yourself. And your talk show, I mean, I have to talk about that talk show because you saw what speaking has done for you, your truths, and how it has touched other people's lives. You went so far to say, hey, I'm not the only person with a story. I'm not the only person with victory. I am going to create a platform for people to share their struggle and their victory.
That's right.
It's not a poor me story. I mean, you know, it's a poor me story, but it's not displacing. It's a story to only let people know this is just a small portion of your life. Any story that I listen to is like, as huge as the tragedies and traumas are, it's just a small portion of your life because, like you say, as long as there's breath in your body, there is hope.
That's right.
And I just want you to just let people know what you want to share today.
I will share whatever you think your audience would be interested in. I'm an open book.
They would like to know, how did you come up with such a profound hope?
The profile hope?
Profound. Your hope is profound.
Profound. I thought you said profound.
Yes. How did that just come into your spirit like that?
I'm not really, I think where it came from was, well, first of all, I've always lived a life of hope. I grew up in a minister's home. I was taught what faith meant. I watched it in my father's life. And faith and hope walk hand in hand. And with a strong faith, I always knew that if anything happened, I could get through it. And I believe that's where the hope comes. As far as where the name came, my daughter named my memoir. We went through, as most people do, hundreds of names coming up with it. And she entitled it Battered Hope because she said, Mom, there it is. Growing up, she watched me, as children do. You know, we need to be examples more than anything else. And she watched me constantly be hurt by things not going the way we had hoped they would go. And, being disappointed. And she said, you have always had hope, and yet I've seen it bruised, I've seen it beaten, I've seen it broken, I've seen it battered, but you still hung on to it. And so that's how she entitled the book and also designed the cover.
Okay, so what would you say the difference is between faith and hope?
Hope is different in that hope is more in the natural, because faith is spiritual, and how can I explain this easily? There's not a lot of room. Well, there's no doubt. Let's put it that way. Faith is strong, right? And when you believe with your heart, your mind, your spirit. There's no deviating from that. And I certainly have had to apply faith in my life, which is totally different than hope, where I hope in the natural that it's going to be a sunny day tomorrow. Or I can't do anything to change that. Faith, we can do something to change it, just as when I had cancer and the other things that happened in my life. By believing in God's word and finding the promise in his word and standing on that word and not letting go and not let anything waver that faith, that's a sure thing, because faith is, we don't see the results. We see it in our mind and our spirit, and then it happens. With hope, we just hope something will change. I hope I'm going to find the man of my dreams. I hope I'm going to win the lottery. It's not something that is a sure thing. Faith, if it's in God's word and it's promised, it's a sure thing. I guess that's my way of describing it.
That's well said. When you was a child, would you say you had hope, or were you just obedient or just trusting? How did you survive even in your childhood?
Well, in my childhood, my biggest problem in my childhood would be my mother dying, because every day when I came home from school, she was in bed, and that's where she lived her life. She died when I was 17, and I only remember her basically in bed. So I was always hoping that things would change. I hoped that she could come to my high school graduation, which she wasn't able to. And I hoped that she could bake cookies and, that kind of thing. But always hoping that she would get better. My dad, of course, as a man of faith, taught me that God would heal her. That's where we need to put our faith and put our trust. But I wasn't there yet. I was a young person, and that also comes with experience. And yet I've seen little kids with phenomenal faith, and they pray for somebody, and they in the name of Jesus, they're going to be healed, and they are. So it's a childlike faith too, I guess.
So when did you actually realize you had this phenomenal faith and hope? I mean, what was the pivotal moment when you said, wow, this is how life works?
Well, there were so many things that happened in my life where I had to apply the word of God to it. And that just, faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word. And I learned that at a young age, that when we speak the word, literally speak it, we're not only speaking it, we're hearing it. And so when I was very sick and I was given a diagnosis that I would only live 2 years if I didn't have a hysterectomy, I got the word out. I got the scriptures that I knew where God had promised me in his word that I would be healed. And I just kept repeating them. I had them plastered all over the house on Post-it notes. I would read them out loud. And when you read something, you're hearing it. And it just seems to make a difference. You're not just thinking it. It's also, you're hearing it. And faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word, and you can't deny it, and God will honor it.
You became a health expert for 35 years? You've been that?
Yes. Yeah. Well, when I received my diagnosis and the doctor said that I would die without a hysterectomy, well, I knew that couldn't happen because I knew God had promised me a child. So I couldn't have one if I was dead. And I also couldn't have one if I didn't have the parts. So there had to be another way. And so I told the doctor that I would not accept his diagnosis. And he got very angry with me, shook his finger in my face, and he said, then lady, you go home. You suffer and you die. And it shook me up momentarily, but then my ire rose up within me, and I stood up and I said, I will walk in here pregnant one day. And I did 14 years later. But there's a lot between A and B, you know. It didn't just happen and I walk in 9 months later pregnant, you know. So, but that was, then I knew that, and I still, to this day, when something confronts me, and, you know, we look at our experiences, you know, we share our experiences with others. We look at our past experiences and say, you know, God, you got me through this. I know you can get me through this. So we're not only believing his word, but we're also believing in what he's already done for us. And that builds. And then if he's done it for me, he does it for you. You know, he's not a respecter of persons. And it doesn't matter who we are, what color we are, where we live, what kind of money we make, if we live on the street or whatever. You know, God sees us as his children, and he wants nothing more than to give us good gifts. So I'm standing in line getting my gifts.
You know, like when we are raised as children, we come under, you know, different doctrines and religions or,
That's right.
you know, faith, whatever our parents kind of lead us on. The God that you had known as a child, do it seem like the same God that you come to know as an individual?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. My father was an incredible man of faith, and I believe that that's part of my heritage too.
That's wonderful. When did you have that moment when you realized what God had given you, you had to share with the world?
The first time I spoke on a platform, I was 3 years old. And my daddy, who wanted all his children to be preachers, would have us come up and share. And so I didn't know what I was going to say. And, you know, we're supposed to be ready in season and out of season, right? And so I walked up on the platform. I turned around. I bent over. I had ruffled underpants on. And I said, look, I've got new panties.
Oh.
My dad never let me forget that, but I guess it was a lesson in prosperity because people sure enjoyed it and they didn't let me forget it.
Wow.
But I knew that, and then when I was a young woman and my sister heard me speak for the first time, I had been doing it for a number of years, she said, you were born to do this. And I'll never forget that. That was 50 years ago. And I still remember those words. And I believe that too. There's a natural thing and a desire, but also it's a leaning and trusting on God that he is going to provide what you need to share and what the people need to hear.
And what made you decide you was ready to be an author?
My daughter, when she was 16 years old, literally demanded me to write my story. Like she, you know, 16-year-olds can be, right? She says, Mom, you must write your story. Like there's no, you can't get away from it. I'm not going to let you not write your story. And she pestered me and she pestered me and she pestered me. And finally, to get her to shut up, I said, okay, I'll write my story. Now, you want to hear a funny, how this happened? A funny story around that. She was, I think, 17 or so. Anyway, no, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, she was a teenager and she was going away. She went to Costa Rica for, I think it was 10 days. And she asked my husband and I to take care of her new puppy, who was a little miniature dachshund. And we did. And she left a one of those dog carriers. His name is Louis Vuitton, okay? The dog's name. And she got him a Louis Vuitton dog carrier. And her room was on the 3rd floor of our house, and that's where the dog carrier was. So one night, well, we were babysitting the little dog. We were in the living room downstairs, and we heard this thumping on the stairs. The thump, the thump, the thump. What in the world is going on? We go look, and here's the little Doxy, pulling down his dog bed, you know, his dog carrier, one step at a time. The thing was twice the size of him. So he gets it all the way. We're laughing, you know, how cute, blah, blah, blah. He gets it down, brings it into the center of the living room, and then scampers right back upstairs again. Well, what is he up to now? And he begins to bring down everything that he wanted for his trip. He brought his blanket, he brought his ball, he brought his leash, he brought his dish, he brought everything, and he maneuvered as we sat there being totally entertained and put all his items into his bag. And then he crawled in. He jumped in. And the thing is, you know, the thing is twice as high as he is. He jumped in and he proceeded from the inside to try to zip it up. I mean, we were just sitting there, our mouth, like the look you have on your face right now. We just could not believe what we were seeing. And that was like Dave, well, what he wanted to go with his mommy. You know, he had seen her pack her bags, and these dogs are so incredibly smart. So I thought, I've got to make some notes about this. This is just crazy. I can't forget, you know, to tell my daughter what had happened. And then the next day, he did other crazy things, and it continued. And we lived out in the country, and a bear came into our driveway, and here's this 3-pound little dog that saw the bear and just chased this huge black bear out of the driveway, biting its heels. And it just went on and on, you know, no fear, and just some remarkable little dog. Anyway, so I thought, I'm going to start making notes. So I did, and I took all kinds of pictures, and then I thought, what a great Christmas present this would be to make this into a book. And so I did. I wrote the little story. I had the picture. I had it, you know, published online with all the pictures, and I gave it to her as a Christmas present. She opened it up. She read it. She began to cry, and she said, "Mom, now will you write your book?" She said, "You have got such a knack for telling a story, and my friends in my generation need to hear what I have watched you go through all these years, and never complain, and always look on the bright side and stay positive, and that's something that's needed." So it took me 10 years to write it because there's a lot of pain, and I had to stir up a lot of old memories. But once I got it written, she reread it, or she read it when it was done, and she made me rewrite it 3 times. Because she just said the message is not what she wanted in there for her generation. And so as much as you said you enjoyed it, she has written it she didn't write it, but I mean, she wanted it written in a way that it would be a story, a novel, you know, without any preaching in it, because I had a tendency to preach. I'm a preacher's daughter. I preached all my life. And then she would say, "Mom, do it again. Too much preaching in there." And so I'd have to go through it and take out the preaching parts again, because this is not about telling you what you should do. It's about telling you what God did for me. And so a very, very wise young woman, and I sincerely appreciate that. So that's the story of how, and I wrote another story about that and have it published called How My Miniature Dachshund, I don't remember what I called it, How My Miniature Dachshund Made Me Write My Memoir, or something like that.
Wow. That's why it's so unique, because it's universal, because it reaches every age that can read words, because...
That's right. I've had 10-year-old little girls tell me.
I know. The simplicity and depth of it is amazing. And like you say, it is a fast read, because it's like you say, we want to make sure you be okay.
Did she make it through this one?
But the thing about it, as young as she was, she saw your life. She saw your reaction. But the thing about it, even before she was born, you had things that happened that you surpassed and kept your head up, your spirit up, that she didn't even witness, but she saw that next, how many years of your life before she was born, after she was born?
I was 40 when she was born.
Right, and even before then, I mean, you lived a life of 80-year-old woman suffering. And your daughter saw the pickup and the continuation from the time you were a child.
That's right.
And she knew that it was a reason. She may not realize that that's why she wanted you to write it, but she knew that it just wasn't in vain, your journey. I mean, to be so
That's right.
So she has a purpose.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. Wow, that is phenomenal. And a dog. Is that when you fell in love with dogs, or were you in love with them before then?
I've always been in love with dogs. Absolutely.
So how did you come up with dogs coming into your life for you to save over 30 dogs?
They mostly, I think, virtually 90% or more, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, walked into our life literally. We've had them follow us home. We've had people call us and say, you know, they know of an abused dog down the street. Can we help? That kind of thing. And we've rescued them. We've brought them back to health and nurtured them, and they became part of the family and lived many years. But they were, I mean, there's so many people, so many dogs out there that need a home. And I never wanted one from a puppy mill, and most of the dogs we've had have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Full breed, but what do you call a dog that's not two breeds? I can't think of them. You know what I mean, right?
Okay, come on. Mixed breed?
I'm thinking designer dog, and that's not... That's what Louis Vuitton was. A designer dog. Anyway, like the two rescues we have now, they're miniature Dachshunds, and they're full miniature Dachshunds, you know. So you can rescue dogs that are still not mutts, is what I'm trying to say.
Aww. So you enjoy that.
A lot of rescue centers out there too that, you know, want to give people dogs. And there's a special bond, I believe. I've watched this over the years because they know they've been rescued. It's like children. They know they've been rescued. People that adopt children who have been so hurt, and even from, you know, when they're very, very young, they know they've been rescued. It's innate. Oh.
You said, "Don't be talking about
me." So sorry. Quiet.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, at least I guess they wanted their 2 cents worth. I apologize.
Oh, that's fine. Wow, you got some intelligent dogs.
Yeah, that unfortunately they know a little bit too much, you know. They see everything.
Wow. So in your writing, do it seem that the men actually respond to it also?
Absolutely. I've had just as many male reviews as female, because my husband's a big part of the book. You know, it isn't just a woman who's been abused kind of a thing. I mean, we were together. The majority of the story is about us together, and I share his early years as well. So most definitely. Many ministers have appreciated the book and wanted it in their libraries as well, because it's a book that you can give to someone who's not a Christian. Yes. And it's not going to offend them in any way, shape, or form. And yet, as someone wrote a review just the other day and said, God is alive and well on every single page. And it doesn't even have to be mentioned. And so my daughter's wisdom was, stop preaching. You know, the message will come through. It's absolutely right.
Yes, she definitely hit it on the nail, because you can see that it's about spirit. It's about getting to a better place. That's, to me, is what God is about anyway, getting to a better place. And that book, wow, it's definitely anointed. To me, it's anointed. I call that anointed book.
Thank you.
Yes, it's psychological, it's spiritual. I mean, it's just so well-rounded and put together, and it doesn't force itself on you. I think that's right. We wanted to make sure that a person can breathe while they're reading it, because even though it was some heart-wrenching moments, it's like you could take a deep breath and, you know, keep hanging with you. You know, so it's special. And what mostly did you want the readers to walk away with?
One of the things that I think was very important, and I didn't even realize this until I read it after, was that no matter what happens in our lives, it's our attitude that gets us through, for one. And secondly, never to hold grudges, but to forgive unconditionally, no questions asked. And if you think about it, that's the way animals are. That's the way dogs are. You know, they have unconditional love, and they don't hold grudges, no matter how people abuse them. And so I guess I learned that from my animals.
Oh.
In other words, forgiveness is important, and forgiveness is a choice. You know, I've spoken about this a lot, and I've heard a lot of people talk about it, but they say, I'll never forgive them. How can you forgive them? And even people that sometimes say the words, you know, that they forgive them, but you can hear the bitterness underneath. You can sense it. And they talk about what had happened to them more than what they learned from it. And so I know that they didn't really forgive them. And we have that choice to hold the grudge or to let it go.
And so basically, what is forgiveness to you?
Letting it go.
Letting it go?
Essentially, you know, it doesn't mean I forget. I certainly know, you know, when I was gang raped, my ex-husband burned our house down. He tried, you know, he did many things to me. We had 2 different sets of partners who stole our businesses out from under us. But what advantage is it to get bitter over that, to hold grudges about that? It's done, it's over. They're the ones that are going to have to pay the piper, not me. And I just let it go. And it becomes so natural. Like, I've thought about this because I've been asked it a lot, and it just becomes a way of life. It's like the guy who holds a grudge because somebody pulls out in front of him, and he talks about it, and he's dwelling on that. It's what we choose to dwell on. And I don't choose to dwell on the negative because it's of no advantage. It doesn't mean I deny it, or it doesn't mean I'm angry at the moment. Anger has nothing to do with forgiveness. You know, we can be angry at things that happen to us, but we can still say, you know what, I'm really mad. Like you do with your children. I'm really mad at you right now, but it has nothing to do with my love. And of course, I forgive you for what you did. So it's the same thing with what happens to us. You know, it's a matter of perspective and making that choice.
And when you approach your blogs, how do you decide what you're going to share that particular day? Because it'd be so current.
Well, I do a lot of posts on health. I do. It's a series called World's Biggest Con Game, because I think that it's a multi-billion-dollar business that a lot of people are being conned into things that do not work. And they pay a lot of money and they don't get results. I guarantee results. I give people hope. And if they don't get results, they get their money back. So there is no question that I'm not in it to make a buck. You know, and I believe that that's a huge con game among a lot of people that sell vitamins and supplements and herbs and everything around that. So that's one thing that I blog about. The other is because I have quite a following. People always are wanting to know what's going on in your life, and they love the dog stories and the silly little things. So I try to do that like a couple times a month, just bring people up to date and give them the craziness that has happened, and talk about the grandchildren and whatever. And just whatever hits me as far as like, it's a lifestyle blog, so it doesn't have a particular theme. And whether it's talking about kids, like one of the stories I recently wrote, which is very, very important to me, because our son, after 35 years with us, our adopted son, walked away. And he walked in our store one day. He had just had a new baby. They had 2 children. And the night before, we had our 40th wedding anniversary. It was a beautiful gala affair that my daughter put on. It was more beautiful than our wedding. And he told us how much he loved us and how much he appreciated us taking his wife in. She worked at our store. We had a close relationship. And the next day he walked in to our store, stuck his head in the door. He said, "I want you to know how much I hate you, and I will never see you again." And that was 5 years ago. I thought he was kidding. You know, he did the same thing to our daughter. So he's never met her children. I mean, and the pain is very real and very deep. And sometimes when the people that I've interviewed, even deeper than women who have lost children through death. And so that's what my article was about. I interviewed people, Andy. I wanted to especially find people who had both experiences, who had lost a child through death and one through estrangement. And every single one of them said the same thing. It was more difficult through estrangement. And when you put the word out there and asked, does anyone out there have a child that's walked away? And this can be in many different ways. It can be because of drugs or, you know, values that aren't the same as the parents or whatever. But the pain that comes with that, because you always are hoping, there's your hope. You are always hoping that someday they'll come back. And you don't know. You don't know where they are. You don't know what's going on. You have no connection. The birthdays, you know, people, another thing, part of that, which is what I wrote about, is that people don't bring you flowers. They don't bring you meals to help you through that pain. They make you feel ashamed that you did something that obviously, because no child walks away from his parents, you know, and there's an attitude like that out there, which I discovered. And so you're very much alone in that pain. And so I was very happy to find other women and other men, because it's sometimes harder on the men. And that's what I found both with my husband and many of the men that I talk to. It's harder sometimes on them because they are also dealing with the anger of it. And so, yeah, I write about things that touch hearts, I guess, whether it's a laugh or a tear.
Right.
So that's to sum it up for you.
That's reality. You write about reality. Wow. I was like, wow.
The second book's coming. It's going to be bigger than the first.
Look. Okay, thank you.
My editor told me when I was writing the first, she said, you better stop because people aren't going to be able to handle anymore. So, anyway.
Beautiful, though. It's like the way you explain things is so beautiful to the spirit. Even as painful as that was, it has some kind of beauty to it that didn't make sense to me. That's why I was so captivated. I don't know how you do that.
Well, I think that's what I was talking about earlier, is that it is attitude. You know, if you take on a poor me attitude, if you throw a pity party and you're constantly focusing on yourself, right?
You're right. And the thing about it is, what I've learned is you have to choose every second.
That's about it, right.
You know, like in the Bible where it says, watch yourself and pray. A lot of people don't understand that means be aware of your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, your space on earth. Make sure that it's filled with the spirit. Make sure it's filled with energy, dynamic.
Absolutely.
Every second, you have to choose.
That's right.
And it's going to be challenged. It's not like it's going to be easy, like, oh, I choose this. No, you get to it.
So that's another reason why, or to explain what I said when I said it becomes a way of life. Because then that's where your thoughts go. If you are constantly thinking negative, if you're constantly expecting the worst, that's what you're going to get. And that's where your thoughts go. But if you know that things will get better, they will improve, you will get through this, and you're looking at it from a positive perspective, as well as what can I learn from this? Who can I help through this? So then when something happens, that's the way you think. It becomes a lifestyle. So that's when forgiveness becomes a lot easier.
And see, you deal with the person's mind, their spirit, and their body.
That's right. You got it. Hang on.
Yes, you do. And I was wondering if you can kind of go into a little bit of what you learned, when you survived cancer. You explained something about how the body works, that it can pretty much take care of itself.
Basically what I learned, and when I walked out of that doctor's office, I knew that I had to do something because I said I was going to get pregnant,
Right.
And I had to be alive to do that. So as I began my studies, and I took every course available that I could find on nutrition. Now, this is back in the 70s, and so there wasn't as much available, of course, as there is now. And I became a sponge. And I learned, I studied, I changed the way I ate. I changed my thought patterns, because being negative also does not help your health, And now I forgot your question.
I wanted you to share what you learned.
Oh, right.
About the body, how it can help itself.
And so when I took my course to be a symptomologist, that's someone who looks at symptoms to determine what is actually going on, below the symptoms, because very often we can put a Band-Aid on the symptoms, but that doesn't do anything as far as the future goes. It doesn't heal, in other words. It's just putting a Band-Aid on it, whether it's a drug or a vitamin or, changing something in our lifestyle or whatever. But we have to go to the source to find out. The symptoms tell us how to do that. So by studying the symptoms, we realize what the body's deficient in. And because the body knows. And if we learn how to listen to our body, and a lot of people are becoming more and more aware of that, then we will know what it needs. And when we give it the tools that it needs, it fixes itself, because we don't know how to do that. We can't get in there and look down our throat and say, oh, that's out of line there, or whatever. The body will literally tell us where we're deficient by looking at our symptoms. And I'm a very logical, practical person. And this is such a very logical, practical science, that look at the symptoms. If you have these symptoms, then usually you're deficient in this. You add this to your diet, it'll probably take care of the symptoms. If it doesn't, then maybe you need something else. We go back and look again. And so the process is not necessarily an overnight process, but I was also totally crippled with rheumatoid arthritis when I had my cancer diagnosis, and I had ulcers and a lot of other medical problems. So when you fix one thing, because the body will take the nutrients and use them as it needs them, because the body knows where it needs to go, right? We can have things happening in our body without even any symptoms, because all of us, like liver cancer, for example, they call it the silent killer, because very often until it's too late, you don't even know what's going on. And so we just build the immune system, which is extremely important, get the nutrients that we need, and the body takes care of the rest. Wow. It'll tell it where to go.
And you just offer that to people?
Yeah, it is a service that I provide. And when I cured myself, I said I will do this as my mission. And I have clients all over North America. And I think I shared with you earlier that I've had 2 people come from the East Coast that the doctors have given up on, and I'm seeing results already. And this is what is so exciting. You can never kill your passion, because when somebody comes to you and says they have no hope, and you not only give them hope, but you begin to see their life being turned around, physically, and then they trust you for the rest of it too when you talk to them about God, or you can help them emotionally and help them in the areas that they need. I mean, it's a one-stop shop,
And you have everything.
I try.
You're like Amazon and Walmart.
There you go.
Wow. You give so much.
But I also have so much, right? So we just give, it's reciprocal.
But how did you come up with the idea to do a radio show?
When I wrote my book, and the response was unbelievable. I had no idea it was going to be, a bestseller very quickly. I got awards for it. I had a telephone call from Washington, D.C. shortly after it was released, and they flew me down there and gave me an award as author of the year. And it was just like, it just went nuts because, all it is my story. It's not this big scientific, research or.
No, it's that anointing.
Just my story, just what happened to me. I just shared it, but people related, and because there were so many areas. See, there's 12 chapters and 12 traumas, one per chapter.
Right.
And some have more. Some have more little traumas kind of thrown in there too. And so everybody relates at some point, whether you've been sexually abused or you've been, very sick, or you've lost someone, or you've lost your business, or any number of things. People can relate on different areas. And so that was your question again. Did I answer?
It made you get to being a radio show host.
That's right. So then I knew that I wasn't the only one that had a story. And there were lots of people out there. And I just thought, I'll throw that out on LinkedIn. So one day I just threw that question out and said, anybody out there have a story to share that you're an ordinary person who has survived extraordinary circumstances? In the first hour, I had 100 people respond. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do with this?
Wow.
I got to start doing something. So I got their stories and I took a little online course on how to do a podcast. And here we are now, number one in all Google searches under hope. And it's in 140 countries and people are being helped all over the world. So
I love the way you do things. You know that.
I'm not sure what that means, but okay.
You just know how to do things. You just have that gift. Anything you do, you have such a unique and thorough way of getting it done and bringing results.
It was called desperation when you're going through it. You got to find a way, right?
Wow. That's wonderful. If people were interested in getting your book or getting in touch with you, how do they do that?
Carol Graham is my name. There's another author by that name from England, so it's better to look, if you Google it, so it's better to look up either my book, Battered Hope, or Never Ever Give Up Hope. Everybody remembers that. Never Ever Give Up Hope. It's all over Google, and it'll take you to everything that you need, and connect with me on my blogs or on Facebook or wherever. But and if there's anybody out there with a story that they would like to share on my show, absolutely contact me, and we'll get her done. I sent you your stuff. I know you've got a story too, girl. So yes. See, there's all those stories out there. And we smile, we're pretty on the outside, and we live our life, and people have no idea the pain we've seen. And that's another reason why we need to share, because there are people that don't understand how you can be like that and have gone through so much. So I know you understand that.
And you are on the Truth Will Set You Free show, Carol.
That's right. The truth will set you free. And I believe that. In fact, that's what I've been preaching the last few weeks, about recognizing truth. And if we are set free by truth, then why are we in constant battle? And I start to think about that because I know a lot of Christians that are in constant battle. Then do they not understand the truth? So let's apply the truth that we know to our situation. Start praying the answer instead of the problem. See, God's not interested in hearing us beg him. God's given us his word with all the answers in it. We find the scripture verse in every situation that I have been in. I don't care what it is. I find the scripture verse that will meet that need because it's already been promised to me by our Heavenly Father. And I repeat that, and I say it out loud, and I keep saying it until I believe it. And when it becomes a part of me, nothing can take that away. And that's where your freedom comes. Because that truth of that word has become part of me. When I was given the diagnosis of cancer, the word that God gave me was out of Luke, where he says, "Blessed is she who believed that there shall be a performance of that which was promised her by the Lord." And I posted that all over the place. Now, I had never even remembered reading that verse in my whole life. But it has helped so many people now, because if all we have to do is believe what he has promised and keep believing. I was laying on the sofa half dead. The pain would be so severe, and thinking the doctor was right. And then those words would come, "Blessed is she who believed that there would be a performance of that which was promised her by the Lord." And so, yes, the truth has set me free from pain, disease, heartache, heartbreak, financial loss, rape, everything. And here I am, talking about it to you.
Thank you, Reverend Graham.
You got it. I used to be asked, "Are you related to Billy?"
Wow. You can preach if you want to.
Oh, well, I'm glad I touched your heart. Now, to me,
oh my goodness,
more important than anything else, because that's what it's all about. We touch one another, right?
Yes. Loved it. It's almost like, don't stop.
Okay, well, ask me another question.
Wow. I'm not going to be greedy, but I really appreciate you being on our show today.
And I really appreciate you having me and taking the time to do this.
Oh, it was a pleasure. And I just know the best for you and others that's going to witness this has yet to come, and you have still so much more to share. God bless.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for being on our show.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.